All right, people of the world, this is going to be one long rant. And I've debated about doing this for a long time, especially because of the fact that I'm trying to develop a following on YouTube under the heading of Gay Random Thoughts, gay being the operant word. But I have to be honest, and I have to be honest. So I just saw a movie called Sal. It's about the last 2 days of the life of Sal Mineo. He was a Hollywood actor. I didn't know a lot about him. I had heard his name, but I didn't know who he was. And he was in Rebel Without a Cause with James Dean, and he did other things. He was of Italian origin, but grew up in New York City. And apparently was out in the late 60s, one of the first, if not the first, actor that had somewhat of a career in Hollywood that was out, and I'm sure it affected his career. And it was directed by James Franco and Val Lauren, I think is his name, is the guy who played him, who did an amazing job. And people are speculating why James Franco is obsessed with this subject matter because he's played like three different gay guys. And one movie that I just saw about 4 weeks ago, he was giving a blowjob. And at this point, one can only speculate why he's doing it. But that's not really what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is the way gay men treat each other, the way we treat each other. And I bring this up because I came out in 1998. And in 2001, from 2001 to 2004, I was on a talk show and had a talk show on Mundos, which is Telemundo Cable, and Telemundo Internacional, which is their international cable network, where I was out on the air and I presented a debate about it. And it was incendiary and it got a lot of attention and I did really well. But then after my contract was over, no Latin network wanted to hire me. And of course, the reason being, of course, is because I was out. And the way that I was out, I was not only out, but I debated publicly about it. And I didn't anticipate that because I felt that as long as I was successful, then I was a viable talent. And I was successful. I had ratings, and I got a Shine Award from the Media Project in Los Angeles, and I got an Emmy nomination, a regional Emmy nomination, but I was recognized, and my ratings were good, and did not only do good with the gay market, but I did well with other demographics, and that's what makes for a viable talent, regardless of your political, sexual, gender orientations. If you're commercially successful, then that's what I think counts. But in Latin media, at least, it didn't count, and it was a big struggle for me. It was a really big struggle for me because of that realization about the world and dealing with discrimination, which I had never dealt with, not as a Hispanic man. Um, but also, when I was at Telemundo, I realized that the way that political game was played was that you always had to have somebody kind of sponsor you, and you had to find somebody like what we call in Spanish a padrino, a godfather. And a lot of these network executives were gay men, and I couldn't find somebody to, you know, be like, oh, I get what you're doing. Awesome. Thank you, brother. Thank you, sister. But also like, hey, no, 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 no. You work commercially. It was like a kick in the balls. It was like a kick in the balls. Anyways, cut to later in my life. I worked at MTV for a year as producing for their online department, and I worked for a production company. But that's not really my gig. My gig is to be in front of the camera and talking. I like to speak. And I started working as a tour guide. I work for Duck Tours now and for culinary tours, and it's fine. It's what ended up happening to be, and I've been in the industry for 7 years. But I've done over 3,500 tours, and when you do that amount of tours, you get to know the audience, and unfortunately, sometimes you profile people because it's just the nature of the job, and you have to. But what I've noticed, and I'm disappointed and hurt by is that I have to say that gay men are not the most supportive. And my show, at least at Duck Toys, is a super campy show. I mean, really, I mean, super, super campy. It's what plays well. It's successful with the audience. It plays well with almost everybody. And whenever I have gay guys on the boat, I have a way of letting them know, like, hey, I'm family. And I have to say that, not only do they not tip well, and whatever with that, but also there's this, and not all the time, but I'm going to say 80% of the time, there's this absence of camaraderie. And it's not the same with lesbians, I have to say. They are way more supportive and have a sense of fellowship. Um, you know, this is my experience, and maybe it's Miami, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it's the way I come off to them, but I have to say that it hurts as a gay man to know that while most of the bullying that we've experienced as homosexuals comes from the straight world, some of it comes from our own world. And I'm talking particularly to gay men. And I know this is a generalization, and I know that it's not always true, but I have to say that in my experience, after 15 years of being out, it is true a lot of the times. And I'm talking about this because there was an incident recently that is bringing it up, and I can't talk about the incident specifically, but you know, as a scientist in my lab, I have to reach this conclusion. That doesn't mean that I regret having coming out in the air, because no, I don't regret it, and B, that I am not proud to be a gay man. But in the 1970s, Larry Kramer, who's a very respected author and playwright, one of his plays, Normal Heart, it's going to air on HBO soon. He wrote a book called in the 1970s called Faggots, and it was about, and it's just like that. It seems offensive on the cover, um, about how we treat each other. And I remember picking up the book with contempt to read it, like, Larry, why would you do that? And after reading it, and now in my experience as an out gay man, I have to agree with some of it. And perhaps myself included, we need to change the way that we treat each other. We really do.